We're in the galleries at the Rubin Museum of Himalayan Art, and we're looking at a thangka. In the center, we can recognize an image of the Buddha, but if we look closely, we see 5 different scenes, stories around the Buddha.
This is a narrative painting that depicts 5 stories that are set in this landscape but separated by various elements. Here on the top we see the range of the mountains, which separates the story which begins on the top. On the other side of these mountains we have another story which ends before a forest, and that forest is where the new story begins. And then at the bottom center we have this architectural structure populated with various people, and that's another story. And then at the edge of that forest we have another landscape with the different kinds of trees, and that's another story.
So this is ingenious, the way that the artist has clearly separated the stories.
It is well known that Buddhist art, just as Buddhist literature, depicts a story. Sutras, which I consider to be the written down words of the Buddha as recounted by his disciples, are narratives of the events when the Buddha taught. And for the Buddhists everywhere, not only Tibetan Buddhists, the Buddha's life story is obviously one of the most famous. But there are other also well-known stories of his former lives. They comprise 2 collections known as Jatakas and Avadanas. So these collections of stories, in which he is often not even a human, but an animal, show examples of moral behavior, workings of karma, and they were meant to inspire people to live a more conscious and meritorious life. And Tibetan religious teachers and scholars actively adapted and expanded these collections of stories by compiling them, printing books, and also commissioning illustrated visual narratives, like a series of paintings. One of these paintings we have here in front of us.
I'm especially drawn to the scene on the lower left where I see a buffalo next to a monkey, and they both look up attentively and seem to be in conversation with this figure in a tiger's pelt. There's something adorable about those 2 animals.
This is a story about a patient buffalo. At one time, the Buddha in his former life was a buffalo. And this buffalo was very kind. And so this monkey began tormenting him.
The monkey is covering his eyes and riding on his back, really tormenting him.
But he would not respond in any way, and he would just patiently take it all. And so this yaksha, this figure in tiger's pelt, asked the buffalo, "Why are you so patient? You are much more powerful. You can just kill the monkey and get rid of this suffering." And the buffalo said, "It is easy to be patient with those who are more powerful, but when enduring injuries from the powerless, it is an opportunity to show patience and virtue, however uncomfortable it may be." So this is a lesson on patience. And the buffalo said that he was also helping the monkey.
It does remind me of a mother with children, that one has to be patient with those who don't understand.
Another interesting story, which also depicts one of the former lives of the Buddha when he was not human, is to the right, and it's a story about a woodpecker who helped a lion.
Well, I see the body and legs of a bird who seems to have his head in the mouth of a lion, which looks very dangerous.
And the story says that one day this woodpecker saw a lion in pain, and it was because he had a splinter of bone in his throat. So the woodpecker used a stick to open the lion's maw and stuck his head into his mouth and took out that splinter, saving the lion's life. But then the story goes that the lion got some food that he's enjoying, but the woodpecker was quite hungry, and so he came over to the lion and asked if he could have a little morsel. But the lion refused and even threatened woodpecker. So woodpecker just flew away. But a forest deity who observed all of this interaction was quite outraged by the lion's unkindness and asked the woodpecker, why don't you retaliate? Why don't you, for instance, blind the lion and get his food? And the woodpecker said, kindness should not be done simply in the hope that I will get something in return. My compassion was not alone with the expectation of returned compassion. Each story is painted in somewhat abbreviated manner, but you can still follow what's going on because a convention known as a continuous narrative depicts the main character of the stories several times. And so you understand that this is one of the same buffalo, or this is the same woodpecker. These Jataka stories of Avadanas were often used by religious teachers at Buddhist festivals as teachings to a wider public, a general audience. And they would read these stories and comment on them.
The Buddha in the center, surrounded by clouds, sitting on a lotus blossom in a position of meditation, seems so peaceful, even though he's surrounded by all of these tumultuous scenes of his past lives.
You can almost imagine that he is remembering these various incidents, recalling them and kind of manifesting them so that others can see and relate and learn the stories and the lessons in them.